inclement weather here at the moment, so we apologise for the late start. We were waiting for some presenters to arrive. I'm obligated to read out a chairman's statement regarding public recording, which I'll do now, and then I'll follow that with a brief chairperson's introduction. So I remind committee members and the public that these hearings are being live streamed and recorded. They will be made available on the Bay of Plenty Regional Council website following the meeting and archived for a period of 3 years. Our purpose is to provide greater access to council debate, decision making and encouraging openness and transparency. And I also remind all present that local government decision making affords no protection to councillors, council officers and the public for comments made during meetings that are subsequently challenged in the court of law and determined to be slanderous. Just a brief synopsis of where we are at today. Consultation on the draft RLTP closed on the 24th of March 2024. A total of 133 written submissions were received, with 28 people selecting to or electing to speak in person to their submission, either as individuals or on behalf of their respective organisations. We've had three sessions of hearings. Previously, we've been in Tauranga, Rotorua, and of course today we are here in Whakatane. These are being heard by a panel consisting of all the members of the Regional Transport Committee. All the hearings will be live streamed. Hearings provide an opportunity for people who have made submissions to speak to the panel about their submission and to present supporting evidence once the hearings are complete. All submissions will be considered by the Regional Council staff, who will then make recommendations to the committee on how the submissions should be accommodated in the Regional Land Transport Plan. The committee will meet to deliberate submissions and recommendations on the 7th of May 2024. The final Regional Land Transport Plan will need to be adopted and then submitted to the New Zealand Transport Agency by the 1st of August this year for its consideration for funding and inclusion in the National Land Transport Programme. I'm holding apologies today from His Worship David Moore of the Opotiki District Council, Mayor Faylene Tunui and Councillor Beres Julian from the Kawerau District Council, Mayor Tanya Tapsell, Rotorua Lakes Council. Councillor Conan O'Brien is on the Zoom today as the alternate for Rotorua Lakes Council. And I also have apologies from Angus Hodgson and Lyndon Hammond of Kiwi Rail. Also moved, seconded the Honourable Ken Shirley. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. There are no items that are not on the agenda. The order of business is straightforward. Any declarations of conflicts of interest, anybody, both on Zoom or at the table? There being none, we will move on. But before I pass over to our first presenters, I'd just like to acknowledge former Mayor Judy Turner, who's here. Lovely to see you. Thank you for being here. Oh, and you're also talking to the Waka Eastern. Okay, wonderful, wonderful. So, gentlemen, floor is yours. And just before you start, Commissioner Selwood, you and I are working off page 450, and the remainder are working off page 477. So this is the Opotiki Marina and Industrial Park. Welcome, Tim. So good to have you here. We're looking at about 10-15 minutes, but we're pretty flexible with our time, so don't feel constrained.
Okay, that should be plenty of time. Firstly, thank you very much for having us here today to be able to speak to our submission. The submission on behalf of the Opotiki Marina and Industrial Park Limited, or OMI as we call it. So just by way of introduction, I'm a planning consultant based here in Whakatane. I've been working here for the last 20 odd years. I've been assisting this person with this project for quite a few years now, and prior to that, since 2009, I've been involved in the Opotiki Harbour entrance improvements. That's my introduction, but I'll hand over to Chris.
Kia ora. I'm Chris Peterson, so I'm Managing Director of Opotiki Marina and Industrial Park Limited, and we're making this submission because of our intersection with State Highway 2, which runs off the outside sweeping bend between Beards Road and the Cookamore cutting on the entrance to Apodi, and we're 1.2 kilometres from the western end of the Waiweka Bridge. So the business plan that has been promoted to look at that intersection with the Waiweka Bridge and the residential area, Hukataya residential area in Apodi, our submission is that our intersection should be included in that business plan because it is all part of this conduit into the Apodi township. Our intersection will become the gateway to the town, and the management of the intersection at the western end of the Waiweka River should include our intersection. Our intersection will be very important and that's what I'm going to speak to. At the moment, Tim will take on the details. So our project is to develop a marina and port facility that is adjacent to the Waiweka River, and the entranceway to the river has been developed with a $100 million development you'll all be aware of, and it's now open and functional. And our intention was to open our stage one in conjunction with the opening of that harbour. However, we have been delayed by something like up to 2 years with our consent process. Our consent has been granted. However, we had an appeal that has stalled us. We are confident of getting that back and dealt with in the next 2 months, and then we will be building this. It is absolutely imperative that our port facility goes ahead. It will be the infrastructure where the whole development of the aquaculture industry in the Eastern Bay of Plenty will come through our port, will come through our intersection, and a connection of that aquaculture will be through the junction with State Highway 2. Just to give you a little bit of background as to how big this aquaculture will be, is that at the moment there are 4,800 hectares being farmed growing mussels for Raymol, Whakatoa Mussels Apodi Limited. That is the biggest open ocean sea farm in the Southern Hemisphere at present. There is another 900, and it's only partially developed. There's 900 hectares consented. There's another 2 blocks of 5,000 hectares that will be consented in part of the Whakatoa iwi settlement. And there's Te Whanua Apanui blocks as well. So this will be huge, and it is the way forward for New Zealand to develop its aquaculture industry. We can't keep harvesting wild sea stocks. It's not sustainable. So the push will be to grow this massively. Even though there's nothing there on site, this will be a very big port for that. For those reasons, all those mussels have to come onto State Highway 2, our intersection, across the Waiweka Bridge to the mussel factory, which is on the southern side of Apodi. More to the importance of our port than just aquaculture industry, it is also, I have 2 business propositions, one to large pine trees out of our port facility. The prospect is to barge 1,000 tonnes of logs every day off our port, and take the 30, 40, 50 trucks off the road into using the Port of Tauranga. So they want to use our port facility. They'll be harvesting those logs within 15, 20 kilometres of our port, and using our barge facility rather than the roads. I've also got quarry. The other development is a rock quarry enterprise that wants to do volumes, significant volumes. I'm not exactly sure of their total volume in planned, but it is 10 to 20 trucks a day kind of volume. So this port facility will be a key part of the development of Opotiki, and this intersection is absolutely crucial to get it on State Highway 2. And so that's why we're saying a coordinated approach with the business plan. If you're going to take a look at the intersection via residential development, then it would be coordinated or cohesive to plan to look at our intersection. The same traffic's going to go through the same, and it's going to really be the same. It's the same question. So that's our submission. The residential development will be driven by our project. Ironically, you're looking at the residential need for an increased traffic flow into the bridge, but that will be consequent to our development bring these people to. So that's my summary. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. So,
Thank you, Tim.
yes, so just in terms of the specifics of our submission, the submission supportive of the overall vision of the regional land transport plan and the objective of enabling efficient and reliable transport systems. I note that the land transport plan recognises that the challenges of transport and accessibility in the Eastern Bay of Plenty include providing and maintaining infrastructure for the smaller urban centres that have growth and development plans but a small ratepayer base, and Opotiki is certainly one of those locations. The land transport plan identifies that the State Highway 2 corridor between Whakatane and Opotiki is a corridor of certainty, is the terminology used there, and identifies that the planning for safe and efficient intersections within that corridor will help deliver the level of service people are expecting on those routes, and the safe and efficient and sustainable movement of goods across the region's transport network is a requirement to support the economy. So that all very much ties in with what we're seeking here. Chris has spoken about the substantial regional and government investment in that Opotiki Harbour development, and that the marine industry precinct that will be developed is critical to the realisation of the benefits of that investment in the Eastern Bay of Plenty. So the primary focus of our submission is to seek an amendment to one of those prioritised regionally significant projects, which are in table 5.12 of the plan. That's item 16 in the table, which refers to a single-stage business case for intersection improvements at the State Highway 2 and Woodlands Road intersection, which Chris has spoken about. We consider there's an opportunity to broaden the scope of that business case to support some of the other objectives of the regional land transport plan, including the safe and efficient movement of goods and connecting places that people live and work. So we're seeking that business case considers the transport corridor to the west of Opotiki more broadly and takes into account other intersection improvements that will be needed as a result of the future developments and land use changes occurring in that area, and specifically the access from the marine industry precinct to the state highway. In addition to providing safe and efficient access to the precinct, those improvements at the intersection there will also address some existing safety issues and provide additional benefits in establishing a gateway into Opotiki, and potentially provide opportunities for other land use changes in that area. So in summary, our submission is really just seeking a widening of the scope of that business case as it's described in the regional land transport plan. Our submission has suggested some changes to the wording of that project description that would encompass what we've been speaking about today. In our opinion, the amendment we're seeking is well aligned with the overall vision and the objectives for the RLTP, as well as the strategic priorities that are in the government policy statement on land transport. And that's really our submission. So we're happy to answer any questions.
No, thank you, Chris. Thank you, Tim. Very detailed submission. As you know, we've got a substantial investment, a lot of us, in that part of the world. Are there any questions from any members of the Regional Transport Committee, voting members? Your presentation today has not fallen on deaf ears. NZTA are a voting member of this panel, so we've got David Spears here with us. His Worship Mayor Luca.
Just in that table 5.12, you've got listed, that your project whose scope you want broadened. I mean, I see a value of 7 million. You've got in your submission around 2.5 million. Is that 2.5 million on top of what's there?
So it would be to construct the intersection. I think at this stage our submission's really seeking the inclusion of the project within the business case, which I understand is a $300,000 investment there.
And you would want those numbers modified, or would they just remain in that table as they are?
I don't have the detail of what's constituted the 300,000, what the exact scope is, and whether or not it could stretch to encompass our intersection or not at this stage.
Okay. Thank you.
David from New Zealand Transport Agency. David.
Kia ora, gentlemen. Thank you for your submission. I have read the written submission in some detail, so yeah, rest assured we fully understand your submission. Just a question for you. You will have seen in the GPS an appetite from our minister to encourage NZTA to look at alternative ways of funding some of this infrastructure, should there be a shortfall in available funds. And I'm curious about your thoughts around PPP type models and co-investment models if we were to explore broadening the business case, because it will certainly broaden the costs. Perhaps you don't need to answer that now, but perhaps it's something to have a think about.
David, I think you need to explain what PPP is.
Public-private partnership, so joint investment model.
Yeah. Thanks. You want to comment, Chris?
Well, we would consider these options, I guess. Without any detail, it's a bit unopen.
Possibly the business case might flesh some of that out.
Yeah.
Honourable Ken Shirley.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the submission. I'm just trying to, having read the submissions, I can't quite get a feel for this particular project in terms of, is it purely a state highway project and therefore the implementation of the responsibility of NZTA, even though it needs to be part of the regional transport plan, or is there some parts of, because it's the access improvement at the harbour industrial zone intersection, is it partly with local roads, in which case it would be a local component? Because I'm mindful that you have to have the local share identified in the council, the Potiki Council's long-term plan. So my question is, to what extent is this a hybrid between NZTA and the council, or is it a council project, a NZTA project, or components of both? Perhaps David can help us best in that. And where does it sit in the council's priorities?
It has been said that it'll be the new gateway into town. So that's, would you like to comment?
We need to undertake the intersection, some work at the intersection in order to provide safe access to the development. We see there's a greater opportunity to achieve an intersection design that goes beyond what would be needed just to service the development in a safe way. There's a preferred solution which has wider benefits than just what we need to manage the traffic effects of our development. And I guess there are could bring in the district council and the entity as well. But we haven't looked at that in detail.
So that hasn't been examined in detail?
Not in detail, no.
From the Opotiki District Council. It's going to be the gateway into town, so I can't see how they can get out of some responsibility.
David, did you want to comment further?
Oh, look, just to say, look, it's a project that's been looked at quite a while. There is a combination, Ken, as you highlight, and it is something that we would. Hence my question about alternative methods of funding, because Opotiki would have to pitch in, so to speak, make this happen.
So any final comments, Chris and Tim? Anything? Take-home message for us?
No, well, thank you. It's an exciting project to be involved in. It's going to be transformational for Opotiki. It's absolutely essential for the town, if you ask me, to get it back on its feet. So, but it involves a lot of areas. This is being one of them we're working on. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us today. And as I said, it's a pretty miserable day in the Eastern Bay, so travel safely.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Renee and Judy, you both. Come forward, Renee.
Is it clear which one it is? Is it clear which one it is? I think so, yes.
Good morning. Thank you for coming. Before you start, Commissioner Selwood, you and I are on page 667 and the remaining members are on page 694. Good to have you here. Thank you so much. So, floor's yours. We look at about 10, 15 minutes, but as you may have heard me say in earlier comments, we're reasonably flexible and we'd like to think that you put your case and have time to do it. So.
Thank you for this opportunity. This project's been going for a little while now. It's been a learning curve for us, and I understand reading your notes for this meeting that in Tauranga you were already starting to look at on-demand services and putting some resourcing into that opportunity, which I would encourage you to do. Because one of the things we have been discovering, and I'm going to get in a minute, play a little bit of a thing to show you what we're doing. But one of the things we're learning is how many people the regular bus type service does not work for a number of reasons. And as we have developed it and come to terms with what's happening, our numbers are growing now at quite a steady rate. So perhaps possibly a good idea would be for just to get you to watch this. This was funded for us by Waka Kotahi as they needed to give effect to why they were giving us some funding. So just to see this.
I cannot explain it. The sense of accomplishment and the job satisfaction you get from seeing people connect, seeing people being able to stop worrying about how they're going to get to that specialist appointment. There's definitely a huge gap of transport that's affordable, that's regular. We are filling the gaps where there's not another service available, but we're also a very heavily subsidised and affordable service. I'm the project manager for Waka Eastern Bay, and it's a community transport that started in March and ran a trial for 3 months, and then we opened to the public in August, and it's really been great trying to fill the gaps in the community. This project would not have been possible if it wasn't for Waka Kotahi's Innovation Fund.
There's many providers like ourselves who provide that connectivity for members of communities. Young, old, people with disabilities, people who, for one reason or another, aren't able to get out and be part of a real living community.
We can put seatbelts on, ladies.
We've put together a committee of interested people. We subsequently formed the trust, and we have developed a reliable, cost-effective and trustworthy alternative transport system. It's growing to such an extent now that we've got one 5-seater vehicle we own. We're currently leasing a 12-seater.
We try and connect them. We take them to group outings, we take them on shopping trips, we make sure they can get to their medical appointments. It's a service that goes from their front door, so they don't have to go and stand in a rainy bus stop or anything like that. And of course the buses here are very few and far between, so we're really just filling the gaps and making sure people are getting out and about.
The bus takes quite a long time, and you would be dropped at Bayfair or you'd be dropped at the hospital or whatever, but this way the actual little coach will take you to exactly where you want to go.
And they take me to work on Wednesday, Thursday and Friday.
It gives them still a bit of independence, which is vital for him and his mother.
Again, we can do those sort of things at a very minimal cost to allow people to extend their social life, their social, outlets that they want, and have unfortunately been denied through no fault of their own, other than the fact that they either live in a rural or a more isolated community.
In the beginning we had 3 volunteer drivers, and we've grown that number to 30 now. And these are people that give their time freely. And most of the time they're a phone call away, and just amazing, amazing people. People like to give back. They see a need and they can give back to the community.
So I was sitting in my shed there for a few months back thinking what I'm going to do with myself. I got a little boat, but can't go fishing every day, so I saw in the paper Hun and Meikle advertising for drivers.
Seeing people like Nancy, who's blind, get to go places that you would normally otherwise not go. And Nancy is just one of them, How are you?
I'm good. All good.
Okay.
Now?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just people out in the community that really have got no one to take them around to places that are stuck at home. So, and it's expensive getting taxis too. Whereas I think these trips cost a couple of bucks each, and they can afford that, so it's good.
Okay, thanks, bye.
It's taken a little while for people to start trusting us and our service, but as the trust is set in, the feedback we've gotten, we're just so grateful that we are making a difference in their lives. I'm sure there's so many other communities in New Zealand that feel isolated, that can't get to their appointments, that would so benefit by a service like this, and we'd love to speak to them, and we're hoping that this will just flourish, and I hope one day we'll see a fleet of vehicles.
Where will this all end? I hope it never ends. I just hope it gets bigger and bigger. But again, it comes down to funding, it comes down to like-minded people like our volunteer drivers who are prepared to give up their time to come in and be part of the worthwhile service that we're providing for our people.
Very good. Back to you, Renee.
Right, so we opened to the public in August, and in August we only had, I think, 6 registered people. So what we ask is people to register online, so we've got their health details, and give us 24 hours notice so we can plan a volunteer driver. We have subsequently taken on a paid driver because the demand has just grown and grown, and we're doing quite a lot of trips for Parkinson's patients or clients, dementia clients going to a day program. Like Carsten in the video, he goes to work 3 times a day. And then just for anyone that's in a walking frame or a wheelchair, we've got one vehicle that's got a wheelchair, and we take them, we're going as far as Kawerau, Tony Atua. We've had a few Manawahay, but we just can't afford it because it takes our driver 2 hours, there and back. So at this stage, until we get another paid driver, we can't do those trips. So there are a lot of rural areas around here that we can't service at this stage because the funding's just not there.
Are you aware of the on-demand pilot that we've recently rolled out? So
Yes, so that's in the Western Bay of Plenty, I believe.
It is, yeah.
Can I just point out too, I think that one of the things that when I was on this committee that I understood was that there's quite a difference to what works in Tauranga and what works.
Oh, correct.
And so what you'll learn in your current, which I think is great that you're experimenting, I want to congratulate you on that project. I think it's great, but it won't necessarily reveal. I just want to give you one story that I heard that was eye-watering. A lady hired us to ticket to go be picked up from her house and taken to a medical appointment in Whakatane, so it wasn't a long trip. They waited for her, then took her home again, and she worked out it cost her just over $7. She then, a month later, had to do the same trip, and this time she booked it with a private taxi company, and it cost her $200. So those are the kinds, when you're talking about affordability. And so we are hell-bent on staying affordable. That's our number one priority, because otherwise the people who most need what we're offering are not going to be able to afford what we're doing. But also we would like to think we're talking about, can we take groups of young children to sporting events, our young, teenagers in particular. We're looking at, we also have had meetings with other providers like St John's Ambulance, because we wanted to be clear with them. We weren't trying to upstage them, and they were grateful because they said they had people going to medical appointments who didn't really need their service because they were quite safe to go in another vehicle. And we had people coming to us for transport who were actually a bit of a worry because of their physical condition and medical needs. And so we've referred to each other so that they're taking those ones because they have a trained person on board to support them while they're on the journey. We don't have that other than the driver at this stage. So there's been huge collaboration in the Eastern Bay with other providers to make sure that we're not stepping on each other's toes and are complementary, which is what our intention is to be. I guess one of the things I'm just looking at your program there, I just think it would be, we eventually would like to see the regional council and their mandate for public transport to be part of the contribution to what we're doing. We'd love to be able to have some more paid drivers when you're using a lot of retired people who are amazing people, but they also have other plans for their retirement other than just driving for us. And so they'll be away for a month or two on a holiday or doing things like that. So our numbers shift all the time. We could do with at least another 1 or 2 paid drivers right now, I believe, to make what we're doing more the opportunity more regular. So we're just asking for you to stay afresh with what we're doing, so abreast with what we're doing, keep us on your radar, because we do believe that there's a case to be made for us to get some funding and support from this committee and the regional council.
And then I'd like to add, we're leasing a 12-seater vehicle, top dollar. One small one we own with a wheelchair, but we are in the process of applying to be a preferred supplier for total mobility. The RFQ just arrived, I think, yesterday. So we'll be completing that, and hopefully we've been donated a small amount towards a vehicle, an asset for a mobility vehicle, a proper one with a hoist. We need to find more money to actually purchase one so that we can fill the gaps for total mobility. Another huge demand that we cover is people going to the eye clinic in Tauranga. So the appointments are all over the show. It's the bus leaves here, I think, at about 11, and it leaves Tauranga at about 2. So they can't use the bus to get to their medical appointments. What we've been doing, we don't charge them. They can get fuel vouchers from DHB or Disabilities Resource Centre, and they merely just give us the vouchers. So we're doing that trip. So all our trips are running at a loss, but because we've got the first year we were funded by Waka Kotahi, and this year we've been lucky enough to secure a grant from lotteries. So we are subsidising our driver, we're subsidising the costs, of travel costs, etc., because it's just getting these people to where they need to be.
Could I also suggest with the research you're doing in Tauranga that actually we probably are in possession of some good facts and things we have learned along the way that may help the study you're doing even in Tauranga. It will have a provincial feel to it because that's the market that we are working in. But I'm sure there will be some things we've learned as we've gone along that will help what your study as well.
Judy, listening to your presentation, you'll see is Councillor Von Dadelson, and he's been leading the rollout of the trial.
Brilliant.
So he's listened to the whole of your presentation, so I'm pretty sure he's going to pick up on some of the requests that you've made. But I think it's fair to say that it's been I'll stop short of saying phenomenal success, but it's been a great success so far, the rollout. So
just one other piece of feedback, just back in my time, just thinking, you made one change to the bus route from Whakatane, from Mahupi to Whakatane. You turned it around the other way, and I suspect that's been the big contributor to your increase in patronage numbers, because now they can get to town at a reasonable time rather than took about an hour to do it the other way. So I think that just that one small change has made a bit of a difference to your patronage. But actually, to be honest with you, most of us see the big blue buses and it's lucky if there's 2 people on it driving around town. And so, again, we look at the numbers we're dealing with and just think we need to work together. So I guess what we're hoping to do.
It's not unique to Whakatane, Judy, I can assure you.
Okay.
But no, Councillor Von Dadelson's listening to all of this, which is great. His worship, Mayor Luke.
Well, thank you for that. I mean, obviously it's brilliant stuff and great initiative. Glad to see it's become a success. It's probably been running for what, a year?
August we launched to the public,
Yeah.
so not even.
Not even, yeah. I'm just wondering about, you mentioned dollars, and I mean, half of the country seems to be stuck together with volunteer groups and things, so it's great. But in terms of your accounts at the moment, you've had a few tranches of funding from different areas. Has it been enough? Question number one. Obviously, probably not. But I can see that what started off as a volunteer organisation, largely with community funding, could end up becoming something else, because you've got paid drivers, you might need more paid drivers, and then there's more demand on resources and all the rest of it. So do you think that it would morph over to something that turns out to be commercial? Or?
I don't think it'll ever be commercial, but we are wanting to morph because we're wanting to morph to the needs of our area. So whether it's transporting young sports groups or whether it's transporting people with disabilities, it's really just filling the gaps where they're not getting other transport. We've seemed to be the pilot. We've been contacted by and helped 3 other organisations, one in Whanganui. They're actually sending somebody down to spend a day with us on Monday to learn from us, one in Whanganui and one in Te Puke, all wanting to replicate what we've done. So we're just getting out there that we've got, at this stage, as of last week, we had 118 registered passengers, and our trips per month is just like tripling every month.
No, well, fantastic. I mean, it deserves more government support.
Your question about dollars. We do get funding for operational costs, but the really hard thing is to try and get funding for an asset to purchase a vehicle. So we've been gifted 20,000. We only heard this week, but that goes a long way to get a mobility vehicle. So yeah, that's the shortfall, is trying to get an actual asset to another vehicle. I think we can deal with operational costs and pay another paid driver possibly for the next year, but not another vehicle, which we desperately need.
Right. Okay, that gives me an idea. Yeah.
And vehicles are always the bugbear of particularly charitable organisations. It's sort of the last thing you need, but you always do need them. And but of course that is the basis of our services, is having the right vehicles. So we do that. I think that's going to be an ongoing need.
Well, then there's the maintenance cost too, and all of that, which will go mounting up.
Absolutely.
And if I may throw one more thing in there, what really would assist us is the cost of covering our drivers on the mobility training. Because that's just close to $600 we're paying for each driver to complete that. And with our volunteers, a lot of them are 70 plus. You know, they'll serve us for a year or two maybe, and then so we've got to keep on training new drivers coming in.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if that was part of my first second bit of my question was the long-term sustainability as this thing, on that model, as this thing starts to grow, because the demand looks like there's a lot of demand.
So we took our first paid driver from Wins, which was fantastic. She's worked out really good. So there again, we've done another good service, and she's been working really well for months.
David, you had your hand up. David, NZTA.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Once again, Mayor Luca's gotten ahead of me, but maybe expand on his.
David.
Yeah, I know, I'm a bit slow. Look, it's an amazing service. I'm chuffed that it's gotten off the ground in the way it has. I'm curious about, do you have a sense of your average per passenger subsidy rate? Because I know it will be different depending on, you know, the passenger, but sort of on average, what's it costing? And because you said, I think they paid $2 or a couple of dollars, or maybe that was in the video. I'm just interested in that.
So what they do is they buy a ticket, which is, I think it's about $37.50, something like that, and then it gets clicked every time they use us, and when that runs out, they buy another one. But you're right, those trips are subsidised in terms of what it costs us to provide them. Absolutely, you're correct.
What we've tried to do is replicate the bus service and say this is a zone. So any zone within our township area is $2.50. So that's one little click. And that could take them from in town to the hub or to the hospital or even a shorter distance. So it varies. And then when we go to Tauranga to the hospital, we're obviously losing quite a bit because it's 80 kilometres plus each way, and we're getting $50 fuel vouchers, and there's a toll as well. So it's such a variation. Yeah, we haven't worked that out, unfortunately. And then we've got the odd group trip, like we've got a group trip for another community project called Community Connections. They want us to take a group to the marae out in Withy Road. So it's a paid driver for 3 hours waiting there. And we really can't charge them more than $40, I don't believe. So that's a huge loss, but it's our community service, I guess, and a need that needs to be filled. So each trip has got such a variation.
Victims of your own success, that's half the problem, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Sorry, Honourable Ken Shirley.
Yes. Good morning, Renee, Judy. Good to see you again. Thanks for the submission. Most impressive. I recall, Renee, you presented to our Public Transport Committee, it must have been early last year, I think, from memory, and I was quite impressed with what you're doing there. And I think conceptually, just the flexibility and responsiveness to need and what you're doing is very impressive. Great. And I'm sure it's a fraction of the cost of what the institutionalised public transport system costs. So it's a question of how, that can be sustained, but it's certainly a fantastic community service and meeting the community needs. So the one question I had though was just the dynamics of having commenced and started with a volunteer, likely retired from what you said, sort of over 70, but when you start introducing paid drivers, does that affect the dynamics between those who are paid and those who aren't paid for doing the same work? Is there a tension there, or?
Not at all. So we have regular catch-ups with all our volunteers. We've got a really good team, and each one of our volunteers are people that really want to help the community, and they are aware of the paid driver and happy to jump in any time. But of course, being in their 70s, obviously sometimes the wife goes for an operation or there's a fall.
I can relate to that.
So they're often not available, and they realise that sometimes because we've got so many regular scheduled trips, we actually can't depend on ringing a driver, a volunteer every time. So they're on board.
Good, thank you.
Well, thank you for coming in. Renee and Jet, a take-home message for us? Final words?
Thank you for this opportunity, and I think our biggest need at this stage is quality vehicles. So any ideas or putting us in touch with somebody that is willing to, I know the councils get fleets of vehicles, maybe you get vehicles at a better rate. Any assistance for us would be very good.
Well, I mean, that's the question of how scaling it and how that's going to work. But does Whakatane District Council chip anything in?
No, but we've got the support, I know, the backing, but financially, no.
Okay, well.
Actually, we do need to thank Waka Kotahi. They made a huge contribution to get us started, and so we are very grateful to Waka Kotahi for that.
Get David on board today listening to this, and as I said, Councillor Von Dadelson's will no doubt lock this into his work program with his committee. So no, thank you again for being. Sorry, Renee, keep going.
One more thing, I'd like to refer to the Waikato region. That's they've got a public transport fund, so that's our hope and wish that we could replicate what Waikato has got.
Very good. Keep up the good work.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, we're right on time, everybody. Right on time. So, Brent, do you want to come forward? Good to see you again. And Jesse, we've got online. Commissioner Selwood, you and I are on page 409, and everyone else is on page 436. So we're pretty flexible with our time. You're in a pretty important organisation in the scheme of things. Be with us for 1 minute while we get rid of Thanks, Judy. So we're pretty flexible with our time. So, 10, 15 minutes and even longer if you feel free. So,
Thank you. Well, thank you for the opportunity to present to you. I take you read our submission. There's just a couple of areas that we want to focus on, and I'll allow Jessie to kick off if that's all right.
Yes, I am here. Hoping you can all hear me. Good morning. Apologies for not being there in person, but yeah, like Brent said, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. So just wanted to start off, introduce myself. My name is Jessie Brennan. I'm a Senior Policy Advisor in the Regional Policy Team with Federated Farmers, and I'll just hand back to you, Brent, to introduce yourself, but sounds like a few people already know you in the room anyway.
Yes, apologies. Yes, I'm Brent Bamford, the President for BOPRC Federated Farmers.
Everyone knows you, Brent, so...
No worries. So, yeah, I'm sure most of you are probably aware who Federated Farmers are, but we're a policy and advocacy-based membership organisation advocating for the interests of rural people in these matters. So in the Bay of Plenty province, we have over 620 members who are also your rural ratepayers, and yeah, we like to get involved in these processes to make sure that rural is being considered and equitably being considered as well. So yeah, that's a little bit about who we are. In terms of what we'd like to focus on today, as Brent mentioned, we take our submission as being read, but we've sort of got two key points around, I guess, the vision and the policies and the transport plan, and also one of our points towards the end of our submission, which talked about stock effluent disposal facilities. So just to emphasise first around the regional transport policies, Federated Farmers does support these, but we do note that there is quite an urban focus to a lot of these. We also just want to emphasise, I guess, the consideration that does need to be given to rural areas and the wider role that the transport network does play in terms of getting goods and services from our rural areas into, where they need to go in terms of those goods and services as well. And on that sort of avenue as well, in terms of, I guess, the public transport aspect, it'll be no surprise to you that I would say all of our farmers in the region don't have access to public transport facilities, and Federated Farmers definitely takes a user pays approach to these facilities, and the people that are sort of involved in those and using those should be the ones that are paying for those services. I'll turn our mind now to the stock effluent disposal facilities, and I'm going to ask Brent to speak to this, and then we're happy to take questions after that.
Yeah, just on the effluent stations, when I first joined Federated Farmers way back, it was a discussion on the table around where we could actually have some effluent stations for our stock movement trucks, etc. It seems to have fallen off the radar a little bit, but it's something that we still think is relevant and should be looked at. One at the east end of the bay and one in the west end, especially investigated. We do actually, when we transport stock around now, we actually do pay a fee to the stocking company for effluent disposal. So we understand about user pay. We just talked about that when it comes to the public transport. So we're prepared to, we would like to see more investigation into that and what could be done in that area. So just to know what your guys' thoughts are on that also.
Thanks, Brent. And sorry, I was just about to say as well, just in terms of those effluent disposal facilities, I guess there's a wider consideration at play here as well in terms of the environmental benefits, but also the road safety benefits. Not sure if anyone in the room has had the unfortunate experience of being behind a full stock truck on a hill, but it's not a great experience, and it's actually quite dangerous as well. So there's a sort of wider benefit here, not only for the rural sector, but also for road safety and ensuring that we're not getting on any of that effluent where it shouldn't be going.
I can speak from personal experience going into Cambridge up that old incline before the bypass went in and copped the lot. So no, I know exactly. But as long as I've been on council, and others who've been here even longer, the stock effluent disposal stations has been, I don't think there's been another item that has come up in every annual plan, long-term plan. I don't know why we can't get our heads around that, but that's a comment from me. So keep going, Brett.
So yeah, I'll just flip back to just around the importance of the network in the Bay of Plenty. I think this is the roading network. I think it's something that we need to think about, because we've got our main arterial routes that connect us with Waikato and the port, and also within the bay, Rotorua and all that. With climate change and things like that, we are having issues around some of, through the lakes and areas like that, the roads falling away or getting flooded. And I think that's mostly really important that we don't just focus on that while our major arterial routes are really important, we do need to have secondary routes available to move produce around. Our port is the biggest export port in New Zealand, and it's very vital to New Zealand. So I think that's something that we need to keep in mind. And that doesn't necessarily always mean it's the main road, but there are other roads within that network that maybe at different times need to be looked into and kept open, and it shouldn't just fall back necessarily onto the local district council, whether it's Rotorua or Whakatane, to do that. It's a Bay of Plenty wide issue. So yeah, haven't got any thoughts on that.
Great. Any comments from His Worship Mayor Luca?
Jess, I just wanted to explore the comment you made about, you said you wanted to be equitably considered. We had a sort of a bit of a discussion about equity yesterday. What does that mean to you?
I guess it's around the fact that rural in the region does play a really critical role in terms of the products that are coming out of the region, but also the people that form your rural ratepayer base. So what we're looking for, I guess, is making sure that in planning and policy processes that rural is getting its fair consideration in matters that relate to it.
Thanks. Thank you. Back to you, Brent.
I think that's our main. So we've covered up what we wanted to talk about, unless Jesse's got anything else.
Before I go to Jesse, David, NZTA, David.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure if this is a question or observation, but you may want to respond. You will no doubt have seen in the government policy statement a recognition, I think, in your submission, at least your written submission, you make the point, Jesse, that there's a significant component of the transport network is local road, and much more than state highway. And in the GPS, I think you will have seen there's a recognition that the maintenance, operation and improvement of that network is critical for New Zealand from an economic growth point of view. So I suppose the challenge that, and I'm putting words in your mouth, but that you would like to pose is that comes with a local share. It's a partial NZTA funded and partial local share. And I'm interested, do you think we're striking that balance right about now or not?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, really. In terms of whether that share is right, it probably does, it would vary on a local level, I would say. It'd be hard to sort of have a broad brush statement across our region. But Brent, do you have any sort of comments on that from a grassroots perspective there?
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying there, Jesse. It depends area by area. There's some, when you've got smaller populations, they may actually still be contributing economically to the country a lot more than other areas, but they've got a smaller rate paying base to maintain those roads. And I go back to Whakatane, and it's a classic example where we've got a huge roading network but a small population to pay the rates. So there are some cases where you could argue maybe they need a little bit more help than other areas, and also given our sort of geographic area as well. So.
Is Worship Mayor Luca then Honourable Ken Shirley? Mayor Luca?
Yeah, thanks, Brent. I just wanted to pick up on what you said about climate change and the need for secondary routes. Because that gets to the resilience aspect. And I'm just wondering if, beyond just making a general statement about the need for these, have you guys maybe thought a bit about some detail around that? Like, do you have lists of places you consider vulnerable where secondary routes are important? Or could you?
I can give you some examples straight out. I think that the route between Kawerau and Rotorua, which also links Whakatane, and that is quite vulnerable. There are other link roads like Manawahe and even Peru Road, which at different times when the straits are closed are needed. So that there are some. Those are just some straight off the top of my head. That
no, but I was thinking of something more formal, so that when you go to funding agency, you actually have these vulnerabilities.
I think that would have to, we'd have to do wider consultation on that side of things and work that out. And because I think it's something though that as a region we do need to investigate. It's everything. Yeah.
Absolutely. And just to jump in there, Brent, we might not have this formalised, but I guess the beauty of an organisation like ours is the fact that we do have access to these people that are experiencing these issues. And while I guess our submissions can't focus on every sort of tiny road that our members might be located on, we do have those avenues and connections to be able to link council with the people that do need to have their say, and kind of facilitate some discussion around that as well. So Brent's named off a few there. You talk to a handful of farmers who'd probably be able to rattle off even more that directly impact them across your region as well. So happy to facilitate those discussions if council would like us to help with that.
Yep, thank you.
Honourable Ken Shirley.
Yes, thank you, Jess. A very helpful submission. I've got an observation and a question. The observation is that, yes, there's that ratio of state highway to local roads, 744 state highway in our region, 4,045 local roads, which is about a 1 to 5.5 ratio. But in fact, the national average is about a 1 to 10 ratio, 100,000 kilometres of local roads and 10,000 of state highways. So we're actually pretty well blessed in the ratio of state highways in our region, which isn't surprising when you think of what we've got with connectivity. That was the observation. My question is, the HPMV and 50 max routes, given the critical nature of heavy rigs for inputs onto farms and products off farms to port, mill, packhouse, are there problems from the Federation's view, perhaps a question for you, Jess, in terms of the approved 50 max routes in our region? This is for the 50-tonne non-axle rigs.
Yeah, so we do have policy advisors that are working sort of directly around roading network. Unfortunately, I'm not one of those specialists, so I'd sort of have to go back to our lead on that, which is Jacob Haronga in our national policy team, but I'm happy to sort of report back on that once I have some answers, if that'd be helpful.
There's one little observation I make, and this is not necessarily Federated Farmers' observation, is we just talked about vulnerability of some of our roading. So the heavier the trucks, there could be an issue around that in some areas.
And less likely to be approved for a 50 max approved route because it's culvert and bridges is the limiting factor.
Yeah, so if we increase the weight of our trucks, things like that, there's potential that we've got a whole lot of infrastructure we've got to deal with as well to cope with that. So it might be a bit smaller but better, as in 2 trucks instead of 1, just a truck instead of a trailer in some of our areas. And
productivity goes through the floor. Productivity goes through the floor.
That's the point. Yeah, just weighing that all up. Yeah.
So anything else you'd like to bring to our attention? Jesse, anything that you'd like to bring to our attention while you've got the floor?
I'm personally fine. Like, I think those are our sort of our 2 take homes, and obviously we've got a little bit of other stuff in our submission there as well, but as we sort of alluded to, more than happy to facilitate any discussions on this or any sort of wider issues that affect the region if you want to have a chat to people that are on the ground and have members that are experiencing these issues. Happy to have a chat. And Brent, have you got anything else you'd like to add?
Good. Thank you for that. No. Thank you both for your contribution, and we acknowledge the huge importance of the rural sector in the Bay of Plenty. So thank you so much, and thank you for taking time to present to us today.
Thank you so much for your time, Chair and councillors. Have a great day.
Well, councillors, that's the end of 3 days of hearings. I just want to thank everyone for participating. As I said in my opening comments, now that the hearings are complete, all the submissions will be considered by regional council staff, who will then make recommendations to the committee on how the submissions should be accommodated in the regional land transport plan. The committee will meet to deliberate the submissions and the recommendations on the 7th of May 2024. And as we know, the final regional land transport plan will need to be adopted and then submitted to NZTA by the 1st of August for its consideration for funding and inclusion in the National Land Transport Program. So thanks again to everyone, both elected members and members of the public and voting members and advisors to the committee. And thank you, Councillor Von Dadelson, for giving up 3 days to listen to this. I think you would have found some of the presentations quite interesting, particularly the last one we just had from Whakatane. So have a good day, everybody. And it's not wonderful here in the Bay of Plenty in the Eastern Bay, Your Worship. You could have done better, but that's okay.
No, I'm sorry.
But no, thank you, everyone. And we will now turn off the live stream and trust that everyone has a good day and good